Welcome, friends. So to wrap up this energy series, what I want to talk about is what are the things that you can specifically do starting today to improve your energy, to move from that low energy state to that high energy childlike state. Before we get into that, I want to kind of break down a concept that gets put inside the bioenergetic sphere that you may run across. So the general idea inside the bioenergetic sphere, or at least the interpretation of this idea that I tend to see for many people in the sphere, is that you just have to avoid stress. And to be honest, it's not possible. That stress is entirely unavoidable. It's a function of life. So I think at this point, at least for me, I accept it, and I think we're all going to have to accept it. The difference is we don't just have to lay down and accept the stress. We can adjust how we manage that stress, and we can manipulate the different stressors that we have on the system overall. And this is actually part of the argument that Jay and I have around the hormesis stuff, which you can check out. We talked about hormesis specifically in one of our podcasts if you're not familiar with it, and I will make a video about it here in simpler terms than what we discussed specifically on the podcast. But essentially, we don't want to be adding other stressors, because if it doesn't kill us, it makes us stronger. What we want to do is we want to minimize the stressors that we can and have enough energy on board so that when we're met with these unavoidable stressors, we can easily manage them. We can handle them like we're a child in the high energy state. We kind of brush them off, no big deal, not a problem, rolls down your back. You deal with it, you're the rubber band, you stretch yourself, and you come back to normal and you're good to go. You have just acute stress, no problem. So, and something I really want to point out here is that humans, at least as far as I can see, are some of the only organisms on this planet that have such a high degree of intelligence that we can actually master our external environment. So when you think about different organisms, say you think about, a bacteria or a single cellular organism, their ability to manipulate the environment is a bit basic, right? They can't go and change the temperature, change the lighting, create this food here, create that food here. What they can do is they can adapt to the circumstances that they're exposed to, which is great. That is one strategy. And one of the bigger differences, as I mentioned in one of the other videos in the series, is that we have mitochondria in our cells, which increase the amount of energy our cells produce, which then allowed us to make these complex tissues and then organs and organ systems, and then eventually us, the organisms. But we have the ability to not only adjust our internal environment and adapt to some extent to these circumstances overall, we can actually go out and change the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And what do I mean by that? We can adjust the light that we're exposed to. We can adjust the temperature of our environments. We can adjust the quantity, the amount of food, the type of food that we have on a regular basis that we're putting into our bodies. We can adjust to some degree the psychological and relational stressors that we are experiencing on a regular basis. So we can actually manipulate our environments and master our environments to optimize our own stress levels, our own function, to minimize the stress that we can be minimized and optimize our function overall. So again, we're not trying to avoid stress. It doesn't mean we have to wrap ourselves in the bubble. It doesn't mean that we can never work out. It doesn't mean that we have to always have food by us every 3 hours, and if we don't, we're gonna melt or anything along those lines, or get extremely hangry and implode on ourselves. No, what it means is that we can make sure we're eating on a regular basis. We can make sure that we have light exposure, that we're adjusting how much energy we're putting into work stress or things along those lines. We can adjust these different factors. We can make sure we have enough food to deal with these factors, or use supplements, or use different coping strategies so that we can manage these external pressures that are out of our control as well. So that's kind of the idea. To summarize it and put it in a simpler picture, is if you think of yourself, you have these external demands that are applied to you, and then you have your energy supply to meet those demands. What you want to do is you want to make sure you have the energy supply to meet those demands, and you want to adjust the demands that you can adjust on the external side. So let's dig into what are some of the things that we can specifically do to optimize both sides of that equation. So the first piece is we can adjust our daily structure. So basically what we're doing is, the idea here is to build your life. The question becomes how to live and how can you create intelligent strategies that allow you to live as best as you can for your goals and your outcomes. So the first piece is going to be that daily structure. And this is your foundation. You're going to build a large building, those huge metal beams that they're kind of ugly, the I-beams, they're rusty, whatever the deal is, but they form that strong structure for everything else. That's what you can think of the daily structure. You can graft, once your daily structure is solidified, you can graft all of these other elements on top. So the most basic elements of the daily structure to start is going to be making sure that you're eating, you're sleeping, you're getting some rest, you're moving throughout the day to some extent, and you're getting some light exposure. Those are like the core tenets of a human. If we were plants, we would need sunlight, we would need water, we would need good soil, all of that good type of stuff. If you're a human, you need sleep, you need food, you need adequate light exposure, and you need some type of movement. So it's just meeting the basic needs of life. So when I think about building out a daily structure, I think about, okay, am I getting 8 hours of sleep every night? So am I waking up at this time? And if I have to wake up at this time at work, then what time do I need to go to sleep at night? So that gives you the beginning of your day, and that gives you the end of the day. The next thing is, well, how many times can you realistically eat in a day? 3 times with a snack, 4 times? Then organize those meals across the day. So you have 4 times you're eating in a day. So now you have some degree of structure. Next piece after that is you can't keep going all day long. I wish that it was possible. And it's just, in my experience, most people have periods where they need to have some type of rest. So understanding that, and it could just be around the times that you eat. So building out that daily structure, having a beginning, having an end, and knowing when you're going to eat and rest gives you a structure for the rest of your day. So you can start adding the different things like movement or exercise or sun exposure or walking or anything along those lines. The next piece I want to talk about here specifically is the idea of anticipating a stressful period and preempting that stress. So if you work in the hospital like I did, working in the ICU, I know that I'm going to be exposed to situations where I'm under pretty significant amounts of stress, and they're going to come unexpectedly, and I'm going to need to react right away and to manage that circumstance, which is stressful in and of itself. So what did I do to preempt this? First of all, I would have a general idea of how the day would flow. So I would know, okay, I can eat around this time, I can eat around this time. Things tend to slow around this time. These are the busier periods. And so I would organize my day and say, okay, this is around where I'm going to eat. So I was making sure I had enough fuel because I couldn't control all of the external pressures in that equation. I at least made sure I had enough fuel. The next thing is considering that things were unavoidable. I had stresses that I had no control over to some extent. What I would do is I'd make sure that the food that I had available was easy to eat. And so what I would do is I'd make shakes because I could sit at the desk and I could have a shake. If I had a problem with a patient and somebody went into cardiac arrest, or say I had to do CPR on somebody to resuscitate them, or they had a stroke, I could do all the things that I had to do. If we had to run them off to the MRI or run them off to the CT scan to get imaging done, I could grab my shake, and while they were getting their MRI, which is like a 45-minute process, I could have my shake with me and have something to drink and take the edge off the stress. So I anticipated that I was going to have stress, and I preempted it by creating intelligent strategies that I could use on the fly for those circumstances. It could just be as simple as making sure you have macadamia nuts and chocolate or dried fruit in your car, because you know on your commute home you tend to get hungry. That'll have twofold benefits. One, you have food to deal with because you probably haven't eaten since lunch, or if you have the afternoon coffee or snack. And then 2, it stops you from stopping on a fast food restaurant and eating crappy food on the way home. So you have good quality food, nutrient dense, and it's also meeting your cravings. And we have a video very ready to go, very specifically about cravings I think you guys like, so stay tuned for that. The last piece I want to talk about with daily structure is being realistic. You can build the best plan ever, the absolute most structured and complex plan for your day, and if you can't run it on a regular basis, it's unrealistic based on the constraints you have in your life, then it doesn't matter. You made a nice plan. What is most important is that you can actually run that plan. So the plans that work the best are the ones that you can do. And the only way to figure out if that plan is going to work for you is you have to make the plan, run the plan, see what you need to adjust, make the adjustments, and then go from there and keep adjusting until you whittle something down that works for you. those are some really important things to keep in mind. Anticipating and preempting stress, and then being realistic and understanding that your daily structure is the foundation for all of the other things that we're going to talk about next, and for making sure you have enough energy and you're managing stress effectively on a regular basis. And again, stress is a logistics problem between energy supply and energy demand. So on the energy supply side, we have the idea of providing the fuel, and this means eating, this is food. So simple things, and I'm pretty sure I've said these ad nauseum on the podcasts and whatnot, so get ready for it. But you want to make sure you're eating enough food across the day, enough energy. So that's going to be calories. And you can calculate your calories using the Catch McArdle calorie calculator. This comes from the research. It's an estimate based on lean body mass, which is the most metabolically active tissue, and it can give you a ballpark of where you need to be. You also need to use the activity multiplier and assess your activity level. You can find this information, all the specifics, inside the nutrition blueprint, which is on my website. We'll put the link in the description here, and it will go through how to calculate your calories and activity multipliers, and has all of the formulas and everything there in a very simple document that walks you through the calculations step by step. The next piece is you want to make sure you have enough protein. Protein is going to be your building block. It can be used for energy, but it's better to use it as a building source. So you want to make sure you have enough protein. The research is pretty clear at about 0.82 grams per pound per day. And then you want to probably divide that up between your 3 or 4 meals. And if you have a snack, I wouldn't worry about the protein content. But between the 3 or 4 meals, better to split it up than to have it all in one dose. The next thing is you want to make sure you have enough carbs. You want to make sure you have at least 2 times as many carbs as you have protein. That's kind of the rule of thumb that I start with. Now, again, these are ballpark recommendations. For certain people, they may have to adjust the different amounts. If you're dealing with type 2 diabetes, you may have to adjust the amount and maybe go a little bit lower so that you can handle, because of your carbohydrate intolerance, things along those lines, and then slowly work your way up. But I generally, for people who are healthy, who aren't dealing with very chronic problems, about 2 times carbs to protein is what I generally recommend. And then the last one is fats. So for fats, and yes, you can have fats and carbohydrates. If you're coming from the repeat sphere and you're questioning, oh, I can't have fats, I can't have carbs, you can have both. I'll get into the video, if you're not familiar with this idea, in the future on why people think there's a problem with having both. So we'll cover that. And there's also on my Fave science channel, the in-depth one, you'll see a very long video about the Randall cycle, which talks about all the mechanisms, but we'll cover it in simpler terms. But with fats, I generally shoot for about 20 to 40% of calories, with 20% being the absolute lowest, so you don't have problems with your hormonal profile or your hormones or your digestion. And then finding the amount that works for you is a bit of trial and error. You have the guidelines, you have the basic standards, you set them up, you run them a bit, and then you tweak them as you go along. You say, oh, well, maybe this was too much fat. Maybe I need a little bit more. Maybe I'm getting blood sugar crashes between meals, or maybe I feel a little bit stressed. I don't have enough carbs on board, or maybe I'm not so satiated, so maybe I want a little bit more protein. That's how you can set up making sure you have enough fuel. And again, you want to make sure that you can have it regularly throughout the day. Now, one last piece on providing the fuel. Kind of what I talked about with anticipating and preempting, having easy, high quality food sources readily available is one of the easiest ways that you can cope with stress. If you are under stress and you're starting to crave salty food or sugary food or fatty food, have those things available and make sure that they're high quality whole foods that are nutrient dense and do your body good simultaneously with hitting your cravings. The problem that I think a lot of people run into is they're so hungry or they have cravings and then there's no good food around, so they just go whatever's nearby, and maybe it's a vending machine, maybe it's ordering online or something like that, and then the food quality is poor, and that's what leads to more health problems, weight gain, etc. So keep around some macadamia nuts, salted, roasted macadamia nuts if you have salty cravings. Have some chocolate around if you have fatty cravings. Have some dried fruit. Bring some juice to work so that if you're under stress, you can have those things ready to go. So just something you can keep in mind is that food can be used for coping, but it's important to think about which food you're going to use. Now, the next piece, and this goes with the daily structure, is having the right light at the right time. And light is actually extremely important. A lot of people, I think, overlook this, but bright blue light in the morning is one of the best ways to help trigger your circadian rhythm and help you to produce this neurotransmitter called dopamine. Now, dopamine is that neurotransmitter involved with motivation. and with zest for life. That's usually what people associate it with. And blue light stimulates the enzyme called tyrosine hydroxylase that produces dopamine. So when you wake up in the morning, very simple thing, just get exposed to some type of light. Maybe it's sunlight, maybe you just turn a bright light on in your room, like a halogen lamp. I personally use a halogen lamp or a spotlight in the morning, helps me to wake up. Very simple to do. I even put it on a little timer. They have the little dial timers that you can plug into the wall. So that's a very simple solution. Or if you live somewhere where there's sun, walk outside and just take a few minutes in the sun, maybe eat your breakfast in the sun if you have time. The next thing is not being exposed to bright blue light at night is super helpful so that you can actually get to sleep at a good time, because sleep is extremely, extremely important in recovering and managing your response to stress and making sure you're producing energy on a regular basis. And we'll get to that in just a second. So having some red light at night can help you to set the circadian rhythm by allowing your body to produce the melatonin. The natural production of melatonin is actually fine. Supplementing high doses is a different story, but producing adequate melatonin is fine. And the other thing is the red light has a beneficial effect specifically on the mitochondria. And we'll do a video talking about how it works because it's quite interesting with its interaction with the water in the mitochondria. But the red light in and of itself is something that you can do right now to boost your metabolic health overall. And you can go pick up a halogen lamp from Home Depot or from your hardware store or wherever you're at, maybe $30, $40 max. And the halogen lamp, not maybe the best to use at night, but in the morning you can use it for bright light, and it also produces a decent amount of red light. The last piece I want to talk about here specifically and related to sunlight is kind of like a combination of all these good things. Sunlight helps you produce vitamin D by irradiating the cholesterol in your skin. The other thing sunlight does is sunlight does have a decent amount of red light present. So that red light, as I said, is beneficial for the mitochondria. And then the next piece is that the brightness of sunlight, it's like one of the brightest light sources there is. So getting exposed to that is quite helpful. Even on a cloudy day, it's still brighter than many lights that you'll be exposed to inside. Now, again, a little coping strategy piece here. If you're under stress or you're really not feeling well, you ate something that messed your stomach up, whatever the deal is, you can purchase a red light setup or a handheld red light that you can shine onto different areas of your body. It can help you relax and feel better because it improves that mitochondrial function. So I'll leave that there for light. We'll cover light very specifically in other episodes, maybe talk about the dopamine piece specifically and the melatonin and all those different types of things. But what I want to dig into right now is sleep. So sleep, as I mentioned in this entire video series, is extremely important for the brain's ability to metabolically recover. And why is the brain so central to all of these systems? Because the brain is the conductor. The brain is the coordinator of the body. It helps to organize different things. So all of the cells in the body are working in unison. And then the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, are another layer to make sure things are working together in the correct fashion. So you want to make sure that your central nervous system is functioning appropriately. Adequate sleep helps to keep stress hormones lower on a regular basis and helps to keep your body in general good repair to deal with the wear and tear that you get on a regular basis. To get adequate sleep, there's two types of sleeps you need to get. So you have deep sleep and you have REM sleep. Both are necessary. Now, as the night moves on, you get less deep sleep. So if you're going to sleep at 2, 3, 4 a.m., you're truncating or you're minimizing some of the deep sleep that you're going to get. If you're going to sleep around 10 or 11, you're going to get your deep sleep and you're also going to get your REM sleep. So trying to get to sleep at a reasonable time, 10 or 11 or so, is probably ideal from a sleep and restorative perspective for your body. The next thing to keep in mind is sleep is energy dependent. You need to have adequate amount of food and carbohydrate stores for sleep on a regular basis. So your liver stores carbohydrates in what is called glycogen, and throughout the night, it releases those carbohydrates. It kind of meters it out so that the brain has carbohydrates, because the restorative processes inside the brain and the central nervous system that occur during sleep are dependent upon adequate energy. And what you need for energy, you need fuel. So the liver is doling out the fuel on a consistent basis to the central nervous system overnight. So you want to make sure that across the day, you're eating enough food. That's extremely important. And then maybe if you're having trouble sleeping, some easy things you can do right away is have a little snack before bed, maybe some carbs and some fat, because the fat will help the carbs last a little bit longer. We'll get into those mechanisms in the future. And if you wake up at that dreaded 3, 4, 5 a.m. time, have a bit of juice or have something sweet to help you get back to sleep, because it'll take the edge off, give your body a little bit of carbohydrate to help you fall back asleep easily. Just make sure that the carbohydrate source you're using doesn't bother your intestine. Now, the next thing that I kind of talked about, the daily structure, is having a consistent schedule. So you want to make sure you're going to sleep and waking up at the same time every single day, so that you're not jerking the circadian rhythm around, because what can wind up happening is if you mess it up too much, and I personally know this very well from working on night shift, is that once circadian rhythm gets jacked up from changing the sleep times and rotating your shifts and doing all this crazy stuff, it can be really hard to get back, and you can get stuck in some pretty uncomfortable cycles. So for me specifically, it took, after working night shift for almost 2 years, it took me at least a year before my sleep got back to normal. And I had to do some uncomfortable things, like if I couldn't go to sleep till 3 a.m., I still woke up at 8. And so I would just wake up at 8, wake up at 8, wake up at 8, no matter what time I went to sleep. And there was a couple days there it was really bad. It was super uncomfortable. So having consistent sleep schedule, super important for the circadian rhythm. Next thing is for sleep, you want to make sure you have a cold room at night. Now, your body tends to cool down during the night, and if you're too hot, it can actually impair your sleep. So that's an easy hack that you can do. And for some of my clients, that's actually made more difference than the supplement stack 3000 that we could have built out together. Is just make sure your room is cool enough. And you want to shoot for maybe like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The next one that's an easy one is noise. So if you live in a city, being in a city and having a lot of noise can disrupt your sleep, especially when you get to the lighter stages of sleep. It can maybe wake you up. So using something like white noise can be helpful. If you don't have that problem, that's I wouldn't worry about it. The next thing is supplement strategies. So you can use a variety of different supplements to help you sleep. Some of the ones that I like: L-theanine, taurine, glycine, lemon balm, skullcap, chamomile, apigenin, things along those lines. There's a ton of different things you can use to help with sleep, but I would only get to those once you did the other things first, because if the other things aren't right, you're missing super low-hanging fruit that you can just solve your sleep. You don't need to go purchase a supplement and take all these different things. Usually it's getting the basics right. So I would get the basics right first, and then you can maybe use these along the way if you're really struggling, but I would try to shoot for the basics. The last piece I'll say is, and this is not directly to sleep, but having short naps throughout the day. So on those days where I only got 5 hours or 4 hours of sleep because of my jacked up circadian rhythm, I would take like 20-minute naps or 15-minute naps, and I would take more than one, and it would help me to get a bit more stable overall in my energy and kind of take that stressed, drugged feeling out of my central nervous system from not sleeping. So those are some of the basic things you can do right now to help you recover your sleep. 8 hours per night. Make sure you're going to sleep at a reasonable time, 10 to 11. Make sure you're eating enough to power your sleep. Wake up and go to sleep at the same time. Make sure your room is cool. Keep the light to a minimum, or make sure you have the bright light in the morning and minimize the blue light at night. Keep your noise levels low. Supplement if needed, but do the other things first. And then if you had a really crappy night of sleep, you can use 10, 15, 20-minute naps to help take the edge off of that poor sleep. Now, the next one I want to talk about specifically is movement. So with movement, you don't have to exercise and be a bodybuilder or a runner or a track star or anything like that. Just walking is good enough. Going out, getting a walk in some sun, maybe going for a hike, go exploring a new place. Just moving overall, getting the blood flowing, improving circulation, helping to improve your blood sugar tolerance or your blood glucose tolerance, all easy things to do. And what I'd say, and this is, I think, not something that many health people discuss, it's always, you need to get your steps in, 10,000 steps a day. You need to do X number amount of low intensity cardiovascular based exercise on a regular basis. Is adjust your exercise, especially if you're not feeling well, you're coming out of the low energy state, based on how you're feeling. So auto-regulate it. You need to auto-regulate your exercise. First, it may be difficult. You may be coming out of a hole. So in those circumstances, I think it's super important to give yourself the space to work up to increasing your activity level as your body starts to heal. Don't try to slam it right away because X, Y, and Z guru says that this is the best way to go, especially if you're getting feedback from the body that's saying, hey, it's too much. We need to take a break here. We need to relax. So that's what I would consider on the movement piece. Auto-regulate. You don't need to necessarily exercise. You can just go for a walk in the sun, You can go and explore a new place. Any of those things are fine. You can start slow and work your way up. There's no problem. And you're not comparing to XYZ Instagram influencer or XYZ bodybuilder. You're comparing to yourself and, okay, today I went this far on a walk and tomorrow I'll go this far, or today I explored this new place. That's where I would start, and movement from that perspective alone, I think, is enough for people to lose weight and get health benefits, even if they're not exercising specifically. Now, if you can tolerate exercise and you like exercising, great, go ahead and do that. But I think general movement is more than enough for the vast majority of people. Now, the next piece I want to talk about, and one of the last pieces, is supplements. So when using supplements, the way I like to use them is to build out a toolbox. And what do I mean by this? So you have a variety of compounds that you can use to help you cope with the external circumstances that life presents you with and improve your ability to use the substrate or the fuel that you have to produce energy. So those are great things. What this means is you don't have to take every single supplement every single day. You can have different supplements for different circumstances and use them as needed. And then you have some supplements, maybe like a core stack of vitamins and minerals, that you use on a regular basis as an insurance policy to make sure that you're covering all of your bases. That's it. You don't have to take everything all the time. I think a lot of people tend to think, I need to use this thing all the time. The other thing with supplements is you want to make sure when you're using a supplement that the risk versus reward is super low. You want your reward very high and the risk low. So you want to be using things that are pretty safe overall, especially for your context, for the health state that you have and the things that you're dealing with, and that the risk of a negative response or really negative outcome is very minimal, and that if you stop the supplement, that's it. And this goes the same thing for drugs as well. So it's the same type of idea. Whatever you're using, you want to make sure it's really not going to harm you in any long-term type of way, and you can stop it immediately if you have a negative response. Which brings me to the next piece, individual tolerance. Now, in working with tons of people as a health coach, I have seen people have the most ridiculous symptoms in response to the most benign substances, supplements. Now, a lot of times people say, oh, well, how can you say it was this and that? It's like, it's repeatable. The effect is repeatable. And the other thing is you don't want to gaslight yourself or others, because there is a possibility that you can respond to things in these weird types of ways. So I would keep an open mind around what the things are, and I would test your response to each supplement. So if you're going to use a supplement, what I would do is I would take a supplement, give it a couple days, be aware of your response, maybe take some notes, and then keep it on board or remove it. Whether you're tolerating it, you keep it on board, and if you're not tolerating it, then take it off and go with your individual tolerance. Don't go with the guru or the theory, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be using some substance, have a terrible response, feeling bad just because X, Y, and Z research paper thing says it does X, Y, and Z thing, but you're not experiencing that. So keep the outcome in mind. The goal of using this is to improve your health, improve your function, improve your energy, all these different types of things. And there's no point in using something that's not doing that. So that would be the primary pieces around supplements. The last one that I want to get into today, and this one I think is quite important. It's not necessarily talked about directly in the bioenergetic sphere that much, but it's something that comes out inside a lot of my time with clients. And this specific piece is the idea of your personal garden. And so what do I mean by this? You have a sphere of influence. You have a garden, a general area with which you live your life, and there's people inside that garden. The center of the garden is you. The next layer of that garden is the people that you love and care about, your friends, your family, all of these different types of people. And outside of that garden is everybody else. And why is this important? You need to make sure that you are taken care of, and that the people that you love and care about are taken care of before you start worrying about this and that outside of your own personal garden. Because if your garden is in disarray, how can you help or improve or move anything else in anything outside of that? So you want to make sure that you're worrying about your primary objectives first and prioritizing what's most important to you. Because I see a lot of people who are worried about these external things that aren't directly related to them, and that leads to them spending a lot of time and energy and resources on these other things while things in their own lives are decaying and falling apart, and they're moving into that low energy state because they're investing all this energy on things that aren't moving their bottom line. So it's very important to prioritize And the way I kind of create this is I have a little graphic. You have you in the center, and then you have a circle, and then in that next layer of the circle is friends, family, and the people you love. And then outside that circle is everybody else. And I think this is an very simple but extremely important heuristic or mindset to think about. It's not that you can't help other people, but you want to make sure that you're solidified first. Now, the next piece, and this is a really common one that you hear all the time, but you are the 5 closest people around you. So the people that are influencing you in your life, the 5 people that you tend to keep around you the most, they have a huge impact on your outcomes. So if you want to improve your health, if you want to minimize your stress, if you want to work out more regularly, if you want to become really knowledgeable in research, surround yourself with people who are doing those things. And you have to kind of minimize people who are either subconsciously or consciously holding you back from reaching those particular goals. You want to surround yourself by people who are moving in the same direction as you and are interested in helping you to achieve your goals. I think that's extremely important because there's a lot of times where I have clients where different friends or family members or previous communities that they are a part of are holding them back from them moving in a particular direction because it doesn't fit with their particular worldview. And when the individual is breaking out of the worldview that they used to exist in, and they're moving forward, the other people unknowingly start to try to pull them back in because it creates some cognitive dissonance for them. It's uncomfortable. So it's important to make sure that you're adjusting your relationships and curating them for the goals and things that you want to move. That's another area of life that we have control over to adjust. And this comes to the basic point here is people in your life can either drastically enhance your life or they can make it miserable, and you have the choice to control that. So a coping strategy here is find the people in your life who care about you, are interested in what you're interested in, and are want to see you succeed and move towards those goals, and cultivate those relationships. And then the people who are not really doing those things or maybe counter to what you're doing, you don't have to completely cut them off or kick them out, but maybe don't spend as much time and energy inside cultivating those specific relationships. Again, you only have so much energy, so you have to control where you're investing that energy, and then you can control how much energy you're producing up to a point, and where you're spending that energy, and then how this energy is being taxed by other areas. So it's important to keep that equation in mind at all times, and essentially use these different strategies and curate your life for the outcomes that you want.